All right, let's dive into a really big topic: the massive, game changing shift in how the United States taxes its biggest companies on the money they make all around the world. Believe me, this is a story about trillions of dollars, fierce global competition, and a complete rewrite of the entire playbook.
It really all boils down to one seemingly simple question. If an American company earns a profit in, say, Japan, who gets to tax it and how? That single question is the puzzle at the very heart of this entire explainer.
So, to make this all feel a bit more real, let's invent a company. We'll call it TechCorp. It's a US company through and through, but it's got a super successful subsidiary over in Japan. And all that money it's making, well, that creates a huge tax problem back home. Understanding TechCorp's dilemma is the key to understanding this whole thing. Okay, let's get into it. Before we can really unpack the big reset, we've got to get on the same page with some of the lingo. Think of this as our quick guide to the language of the game. So, the first key term you need to know is outbound taxation. It sounds complicated, but it's just the rulebook the US uses for taxing American companies, like our tech corp, on the income they make from their foreign businesses. Basically, it's all about how Uncle Sam follows the money as it flows from other countries back toward the US. Next up, we have the Controlled Foreign Corporation, or CFC for short. This is super important. When TechCorp owns more than half of its Japanese subsidiary, that foreign company officially becomes a CFC. And that's the trigger. The moment that happens, boom, a whole bunch of special, complex US tax rules suddenly kick in.
All right, now let's jump in a time machine and rewind the clock to the world before 2018. To really get why the change was so dramatic, you first have to understand the old system and, frankly, the massive problems it was causing. Before 2018, the US operated on what's called a worldwide system. Now, in theory, that sounds straightforward, right? It means the US claimed the right to tax a company's profits no matter where on earth they were earned. But, and this is a huge but, there was a catch. The tax was only due when the company actually brought the money back to the US. This one little detail created a powerful incentive to just leave the cash overseas.
And what was the result of that incentive? Well, this: a staggering $2.6 trillion. That's trillion with a T. By 2017, that's how much profit US companies had parked in offshore accounts, just sitting there, with its US tax bill delayed indefinitely. This was famously called the lockout effect. All that money was essentially locked out of the US economy because it was just too expensive to bring it home. So, imagine you're the CEO of TechCorp. This slide shows the choice you had to make. Option 1, bring your Japanese profits back to the States and get hit with a tax rate as high as 35%. Or option 2, just leave the money in Japan and pay zero US tax, at least for now. It wasn't much of a choice, was it? Yeah, so clearly the system was not working. It was broken, and Washington knew it. So at the end of 2017, Congress passed the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, or the TCJ, and with it, they completely rewrote the international tax playbook for 2018 and beyond. And this wasn't just a small tweak, it was a complete philosophical reset. The US moved away from that old worldwide system with its deferral loophole and shifted to something closer to a territorial system. The basic idea of a territorial system is that a country mostly just taxes the income that's earned inside its own borders. A massive, massive piece of this whole overhaul was slashing the main corporate tax rate, taking it all the way down from 35% to just 21%. And the goal here was pretty simple: make the US a much more attractive and competitive place for companies to operate and, crucially, to invest their profits. So what does this new rulebook actually mean for a company like our friend TechCorp? Let's break down the new playbook piece by piece. This table really tells the whole story at a glance. You can see the corporate rate drop to 21%. You can see that foreign dividends, which used to be taxable when you brought them home, are now generally 100% tax-free. But, and here's the kicker, to stop companies from just shifting all their profits to tax havens, they added these two new super powerful guardrails: GILTI and BEAT. All right, let's tackle the first big one, GILTI. I know, it's a mouthful. Global Intangible Low Taxed Income, but just think of it as a new global minimum tax. It's specifically designed to catch the profits from those really valuable but hard to pin down things like patents, software, and brand names. You know, the intangible assets. GILTI makes sure that income faces at least some tax, no matter where in the world it's hiding. So how on earth does it work? Well, the actual math is a nightmare, let's be honest. But the basic idea is pretty straightforward. First, the US looks at all of a company's foreign profit. Then it subtracts what it considers a normal 10% return on any physical stuff the company owns abroad. Whatever's left over is considered excess profit, which is probably from those intangibles, and that is what gets hit with the GILTI tax. Now, here's where it gets really clever. At the exact same time the law created GILTI to tax intellectual property, or IP, that's held abroad, it created a new tax break called FDII. And that gives you a lower tax rate on income from IP that's held in the United States. It's the classic carrot and stick approach, a penalty for keeping your valuable ideas offshore and a reward for bringing them back home. Okay, the other big guardrail is BEAT, the Base Erosion Anti-Abuse Tax. This one is all about stopping big companies from eroding the U.S. tax base. It does that by targeting large deductible payments like royalties or interest that a U.S. company might make to its own foreign subsidiaries to shift profits offshore. It's basically another safety net to stop profits from leaking out of the U.S. tax system. Okay, deep breath. We have thrown a lot of acronyms and rules at you, so now let's zoom out and ask the big question. What does this great tax reset actually mean in the real world? I love this quote because it just perfectly captures the new philosophy. The old deal was, we'll tax it when you bring it home. Simple. The new deal is, hey, bring it home tax-free, but in exchange for that, we're going to start taxing some of your low-tax foreign profits right now, no matter where they are. It's a totally different bargain. So if you're going to remember anything from this, remember these 4 things. First, that lockout effect that trapped trillions of dollars overseas, it's gone. Second, this is not a pure territorial system. Thanks to things like GILTI, the US is still keeping an eye on foreign profits. Third, where a company decides to put its patents and its brands is now absolutely critical. And finally, number 4, while the goal was to make the US more competitive, the new system is, without a doubt, incredibly complex. And that leaves us with one final fascinating thought. The US made a really bold move here. It completely changed the game to compete on the world stage. But here's the thing. International tax is a competitive sport. Other countries are already reacting with their own rule changes. So you have to wonder, how long will this new American playbook actually stay new? It's something to think about. Thanks for joining us.